With the recent news that My Little Pony is getting a live action movie, I thought it could be fun to kind of speculate on what the next generation of My Little Pony might actually be like. If you guys are curious about the live action movie and my thoughts about the different plots that could possibly take place there, I do have a video on that. You can click it in the top right card or wait till the end of the video to check it out there. But suffice it to say, the news is basically just that it's been announced. They're working on it and it's gonna be a whole thing, and that is literally, that's it. But what is Generation 6 gonna be like? Is it gonna be followed up by the movie? Is the movie gonna have any significance whatsoever on Generation 6? Perhaps, and maybe, and it could be interesting if the movie somehow resets the universe of Generation 5 to reset it in some way to introduce Generation 6. Maybe some kind of big grand event thing happens towards the end of the movie that basically resets the world of Equestria or something like that, and that's how we get Generation 6. That could be kind of a fun, interesting, super cool way to introduce Generation 6 with a whole bunch of brand new characters that we've never seen before and all that other stuff. But what are my predictions for Generation 6? We've talked plenty about the movie before in other videos, so let's talk about Generation 6, the series, because there's gonna be a series regardless of what happens. There's going to be some kind of series after the movie, or perhaps even before the movie. So here are my predictions, starting with the fact that it's going to come back to 2D. 3D, the CG, stuff like that, it seemed to be cheaper for them to make, and so maybe they'll stick to that route again, but I honestly think that Generation 5 was such a big failure for them that they're probably going to try to just erase it from existence and stuff like that. So there's probably not going to be many Generation 5 references or anything like that, and probably no Generation 5 tie-ins whatsoever. But I also think that they're going to do away with the CG because it was so, it just did not do well for them at all. So I do think that we're going to get back to a 2D design and style for the characters and stuff like that. Now, my second thing here is that even though it's going to come back to a 2D style, it's probably going to go off of, like, I want to say the super cheap, super ugly, super awful design style that you see a lot of cartoons have right now. Think of like Teen Titans Go, the design for those characters. It's probably going to have really low effort designs or super simplistic designs or something that just, it's not gonna look good. I honestly genuinely don't think that Generation 6 is gonna look good, but we can only wait and see. This is all just speculation, of course, and that is my prediction there, that it's gonna have almost a Teen Titans Go style to the characters and design of everything, and it's gonna be awful. Now, I know I said that there's not going to be many Generation 5 references, but I do genuinely think that there's going to be even more old generation references. You're going to see more Generation 4 references because that is like their golden cow, their cash cow, whatever you want to call it. And I genuinely think that it's possible they may just reuse Generation 4 characters and just literally just redo Generation 4 basically. That's completely possible. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of older references. If you noticed that in Generation 5, they really seemed to want to do a lot of Gen 3 references and things like that. Obviously, it referenced a lot from Generation 4 because it was technically a follow-up series from that, but they talked a lot about some old characters and referenced old things that happened in older generations of My Little Pony. So I do think that there might be even more references in Generation 6 than there was in Generation 5. This partially comes from Doctor Who, of all places. Doctor Who recently, I don't know what it is about them, but they seem to just really be trying their hardest to get super old fans. So they've been introducing a lot of old Who lore and old Who characters and things like that, and basically just expecting everyone to know what all of that is and stuff like that. I do kind of feel like Generation 5 was doing that as well, and it was something that was a little bit annoying about Generation 5. They seem to rely so heavily on Generation 4 already, and then to just constantly be making references and things like that to Gen 3, Gen 2, Gen 1, etc., etc. It just felt kind of weird and cheap and just awful, and I genuinely think Generation 6 is going to go even further into that and rely even heavier on Generation 4, maybe even heavier on the references and lore and history from Generation 3 and onwards. So I really think that that's going to happen. You're going to see a lot of old gen references. It seems to be something that a lot of shows and stuff are doing lately, where they're like, oh, come watch this reboot. We're referencing the old show a lot, and I don't know. But anyway, on to the fourth prediction. I do think that it's still, even at this point, I do still think it's going to be targeted towards like 5 and 6 year olds and things like that. When Generation 5 was first like leaked and rumors were going around and stuff was happening with Generation 5 before it ever came out, a lot of rumors were floating around that they were going to tackle a little bit of heavier topics, and they were going to be aimed more towards teenagers to young adults and stuff like that. There was a lot of rumors for that. And then of course, when the movie finally came out and Generation 5 finally started, it was very clearly aimed at like 5 to 6 year olds or 5 to 9 year olds, like how the old generations were already. They didn't seem to learn anything from Generation 4 and about how like most of their audience is teenagers to young adults at all, and they decided to stick with the young girls basically as their audience. I do think that they're going to continue that trend and continue to market it towards 5 to 6 year olds. Now, that being said, I wouldn't be completely surprised if they do try to aim it more towards teenagers to young adults. I'm talking like somewhere between 10 to 18 or something like that. I wouldn't be completely surprised, because they have announced not too long ago, actually, to be honest with you, it's probably been months ago now at this point, that they're gonna basically do an entire rebrand. They're gonna do an entire rebrand of the My Little Pony franchise, and so it makes sense that maybe this big rebrand could finally be a point where they're gonna start targeting more towards, you know, older people, you know, 10 to 15, 10 to 18 or something like that. Maybe that could now be their target audience. Maybe, perhaps, possibly, because it's a rebrand, but I do genuinely think that they're gonna continue the trend of aiming it towards 5 to 6 year olds. Now, the last prediction, I kind of felt like I needed to throw something out there that's a little bit more wild as a speculation, as a prediction, because honestly, the previous 4 here on this list honestly really do feel very likely. This last one doesn't feel as likely, but again, with the idea of that rebrand and with the idea of the live action movie that's currently in the works, it does make sense that humans might exist in Generation 6, especially if it does follow up from the movie, because if you're going to do a live action My Little Pony movie, there has to be humans or a human world of some kind somewhere, right? Honestly, that's the only way you could do it in live action, is if there's actually people or the actual real world or something like that. So I do feel like if Generation 6 is going to have any tie-ins to the movie, it will be humans. And I do think that it wouldn't be too big of a shock to see humans in My Little Pony. Older generations had that, and as I said earlier on this list, I do predict that they're gonna do a lot of old gen references, so it's very possible that that is exactly what's gonna happen. They're gonna reference old characters, the old human characters from like Gen 2 or 3 or 1 or whatever generation it was from. I do feel like that might be the case, and they might rely heavily on that rather than Generation 4, but I do still think they're gonna rely heavily on Generation 4. So these are some predictions of how I think the next series for My Little Pony is going to come. Now, this is kind of early for predictions because there hasn't been any announcement for the next series or anything like that, and it's only been a month since the movie was announced to be in the works. So it's definitely going to be a couple of years before we probably see the movie, and it's probably going to be another year or two before we see any kind of announcement on the next generation of My Little Pony and what their goals are. Now, I have heard some rumors that it is literally just going to be Generation 4 all over again. They're literally going to use the exact same characters. It's literally going to be the Twilight from Generation 4 and the Rainbow Dash from Generation 4 and Fluttershy from Generation 4. They're going to use all of the exact same characters and just put them in new settings and kind of redesign them a little bit. I've heard a lot of rumors about that. I've seen some supposed concept art for that and things like that, but I gotta be honest with you guys, that exact same thing happened with Generation 5. There was supposedly concept art for Generation 5 versions of Twilight and Fluttershy, etc., and they kind of reworked them. Like, for example, Twilight didn't have a horn, and there was a lot of weird concepts for them and stuff like that. And then, of course, Generation 5 happened, and it had nothing to do with the Generation 4 characters, other than the fact that it's kind of a follow-up series. I do think that the same thing is happening again, where people are predicting, and maybe there are some like actual official artwork of the Gen 4 characters and a new style and a redesign, but honestly, these could be from that original Generation 5 concept and stuff like that. So I really wouldn't hold my breath to the fact that they're going to use those characters. I wouldn't be completely surprised, but I just wanted to throw that out there because I know people are probably going to comment, actually, it's literally just going to be Generation 4 again, but uglier and stupider and stuff like that, because I've seen concept art. You probably have seen concept art, but the way that it's been presented everywhere, I don't think it's been official. I don't think there's been any credible source that had those. If there is, please do link me in the comments below. Maybe I'll talk about that for a future video or something like that. But for now, that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please do consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and doing all of those wonderful things like that. Because when you do those wonderful things like that, not only do you get access to wonderful content such as this, but you also get to become wonderful yourself. And I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.